What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unparalleled Sports Talk with yours, Kwame Fisher Jones. As always, I am him. As this is NBA Day, I'm joined by my man Everett Terry Jr., aka Sports Talk Terry. We got a lot to discuss, man. A lot to discuss. I see
We
you
do. We
wanted
do. It's been a
you
while.
want,
A
you
lot to
wanted to
dig into.
reference your T-shirt here because you take offense to mine, so you wanted to reference yours.
I mean, listen, today is 4th of July. So, in honor of Independence Day, celebration of America, who else other than Captain America?
And as I said, it's actually technically isn't when you technically isn't. Fourth of July is not Independence Day, but that's a story for another day. Speaking of
Yeah, I just celebrate when
independence,
everybody else do.
speaking of independence, Klay Thompson has
Mm.
now become independent of the Warriors. We discussed a few shows back about him possibly going to Magic. I thought it was a foregone deal, but he ended up with another M team, the Dallas Mavericks. Before we get into the departure, and I got a lot of feelings on this, where do you think this puts the Mavericks in the thresh as far as the hierarchy in the Western Conference?
Well, here's the thing. So, let's go simply facts. The Dallas Mavericks literally just played in the NBA Finals. Now, they looked outmanned, they looked outgunned. Jason Kidd definitely looked out coached. But the one thing that was a glaring need when you have guys, ball dominant guys like a Kyrie and a Luka Doncic, are guys who can hit knockdown, wide open jumpers. That's a fact. The other fact that we saw in that finals is that they didn't have enough outside shooting that could pull attention away from Luka and Kyrie so that they could operate. Now, Kyrie was a no-show. That's a whole other conversation. But the one thing that we also know is that Klay Thompson is regarded as one of the greatest three-point shooters in the history of NBA. That's not fiction. That's factual statistical information. Granted, he didn't have the best closeout to his Warriors career. Yes, he's come off of massive knee and leg injuries over the course of the last 5 years of his career. Yes, he's not the same guy who was already not the most athletic guy in the NBA, who now has age working against him going into his 34, 35 year. But what we do know is that, and we saw this with Ray Allen, shooters can always shoot. Okay. And as
Robert
long as
Horry.
Clay's going to get, as long as he can get open looks, which in an offense that's going to command double teams of both Kyrie and Luka, he's going to get more open looks than he ever saw with Steph because Steph was the only shooter. Now you got two guys that you have to defend. I don't think he'll see looks this good since when he played with KD and Steph, where teams had to double them, and it gave him looks like unparalleled looks where he was just getting open looks where he had all day to sit there and decide what he wanted to do. And I think that's going to add, and I said this when he signed, at least 2 very productive years back onto his career because he's not going to have to do a whole bunch of movement. He's just going to go find a little spot, wait for the defense to collapse, catch and shoot. And I think what this does is gives the Dallas Mavericks a legitimate threat to be contenders for the next 2 to 3 years, respectfully. Kyrie's window, 2 to 3 years, Klay's 2 to 3 years, Luka. They may add another piece there. I think this really, really may help them be consistently that team that'll be an odds-on favorite to come out of the West, along with Minnesota, along with Denver, and maybe one other team, depending on moves. Lakers, if they get things together. So definitely a good move for them. Well done by Cuban. He always has an eye for the guys that
Nico. That's
fit
Nico
his
Harris. You gotta give Nico credit for that. That was Nico that made that
fair.
move.
But Cuban's the one that's got to sign off on it. So good job for putting people, Nico, etc., in place who
So we
identify
giving him
that
credit
talent
for
and sign
picking
up
up the
on it.
phone while he was in the south of France. Like we saluting Cuban because he picked up
Hey,
because he got
listen,
cell service in the south of France.
listen. We credit Jeff Bezos for everything on Amazon, and that man don't touch a
No,
single thing on the
no, I
Amazon
don't credit
website.
Jeff Bezos. I get your point. All right. So if I told you there was only a handful of players that made over 200 threes last year, and one of them was Klay Thompson, would you be surprised?
No, that's what he does.
He was top five and top. He was in the top 10 in threes made. I want to say top five. I should have recapped the numbers in my head. If I told you that there was only a handful of players who averaged three or more threes on a catch and shoot situation in the NBA, and you're talking about over 300 players in the NBA, and one of those was Klay Thompson, would you be surprised?
No,
Well, I would because the rumor or the mantra or the word out of town, the what's the word I'm looking for when people try to throw stuff out there, not the rumor.
word on the
Well,
street.
the not word on the street, but you know, the what people were trying to throw out there was that Klay Thompson was done. Well, we've determined that that's a lie. Klay Thompson had a bad year at 18 points a game. Klay Thompson had a bad year being yin-yang out of the lineup. And we've since found out that Klay Thompson has been eligible for, well, not found this part out, but we found the second part out. We all knew he'd been eligible for an extension for the last 3 years.
Right.
What we did not know is that the Warriors have been stonewalling him for those 3 years. So this was
I
a
would if
guy, you
I'm them
mentioned the
too.
injuries, but you mentioned the injuries that literally and figuratively put his body on the line for an organization, and they can't even be bothered to pick up a phone and at least offer him a deal. And we heard the reports for the 48 million, but I've said this for years. If it makes it outside to the media, that means they wanted it out. So chances are that 48 million was actually a facade, probably the first year guarantee, second year option, whatever have you. But even so, you just played Buddy Hield. You're paying Buddy Hield guaranteed 21 million. Klay wasn't worth that. Klay wasn't worth that for at least 2 years. And another thing with this, and let me get back to Klay with the Mavericks. Not only will he help the Mavericks on the court, he'll help them off the court. Because Luka ran into something that was shocked to see a player of his complexion get. And that's scrutiny. I've never seen a player like Luka be criticized. He wasn't criticized that way. Steve Nash wasn't criticized that way. We'll go even further back. Larry Bird wasn't. Pau Gasol wasn't criticized that way. Peja Stojakovic, we're still looking for Peja in those Western Conference Finals, Game 7 against the Lakers. Wasn't criticized that way. I mean, Mark Price wasn't criticized that way. Like, to question his defense when we ain't here, it's like the scene from one of my favorite movies, Boomerang, when she says, he ain't married me for my cooking. Ain't nobody drafting Luka for his defense.
Yeah,
So we
but
talking defense? Come
I
on, man.
think
He
it's less.
always
I think
whines the refs. He
yeah, but
was
I think
injured. He
it's
was on one good leg playing against two of the best perimeter defenders and one of the best minds in Sam Cassell. And we can just ignore Sam Cassell like he don't exist. But everywhere he goes, they win. Everywhere he goes, players play at the highest level. Even B was an MVP when Sam Cassell was sitting on that bench. But I digress.
well.
So we're
Hold on,
sitting there, we're watching Luka get crushed. And now he's going to come back next year. And the first time he yells at the referee, it's going to be news. It's going to be front page. Well, they don't do front page anymore. What is it? Clickbait. I guess clickbait is what they use now. So Klay will be able to help him get through that because Steph was
but
a wretched defender for a small window. And now, in my opinion, and watching him play, he's one of the better team defenders in the NBA. But even aside from that, he will help him with that. He'll provide a calmness in the locker room. Will he possibly have 0 for 10 games? Maybe. He'll be the third, possibly fourth option on that team. That's going to work for them. And he
I
told
agree.
the Warriors he wanted a fresh start. And we'll peel that back in a second. But by fresh start, perhaps new offense, perhaps an opportunity to. I mean, we're going to put Klay Thompson in a pick your spot situation. Just pause on that for a minute. We're going to put Mr. 37 points in a quarter in a pick your spot situation where he can go anywhere on the arc and sit there. And they're gonna leave him because it's just gonna get open. You still got the lob that they run with Gafford and Lively, so they still have to worry about that. You still got the activity of PJ Washington there, and then you got Kyrie. I mean, if you want to leave Kyrie, go ahead. But from what I remember in the finals, they were still tilting defenses to him. This is going to be a fantastic move for him. I would have loved to have seen him go to the Lakers just because I would like to see LeBron get as much help as possible. But statistically, you're getting one of the best three-point shooters in the game now. Forget about years before. Statistically, you're getting one of the best three-point shooters in the game now, and he might have a little on his shoulder. So I love the move for that.
Well, all right. So two things, really quick. One, you said that Luka was receiving this scrutiny, and he started naming guys like Mark Price and guys like Larry Bird
You
who
can think of
played
any
in the
prolific
80s.
white players or Caucasian
But
players.
but the argument isn't about that. Number one, Mark Price was never the leader that Luka was. He was never the guy that was considered the true face of the franchise.
Fair enough.
Even
You can
Larry
move
Bird,
past the mark.
yes,
I replace Mark Price with like Tom Chambers, but you get the gist. You get the point of what I'm saying.
but the point of what I'm saying was it was less about the fact that Luka didn't play defense and the fact that they lost because he spent more time arguing with the refs than getting back on defense and leading his team. It wasn't about him not being good on defense. Yes, people know he wasn't good on defense, but his inability to get back because he's spending all his time and energy arguing versus just playing basketball is why, in particular, that one game he's down on the ground arguing with the refs instead of getting back, which is what gave Boston the 2-for-1 that put them in a position to go ahead and take it was either game 2 or game 3. Point I'm making is leaders lead from the front. And what you noticed is the game that they blew them out, he just came and played ball. Now, granted, they got lamb blasted the following game because
Yeah, and that was a
Joe
game
Mazzulla did
Boston
a
had
great
already
job of
gotten on the
adjusting.
plane.
Yeah, Joe Mazzulla had done a great job of making adjustments
Sam
and coaching
Cassell.
effectively.
I'm not giving
Sam
Mazzulla
Cassell,
any credit
Joe
for that.
Mazzulla is going to get the credit as the head coach. But the point I'm making is Luka knows that he needs to improve certain aspects of his game. And this was the first time he was in the brightest lights on the brightest stage where everybody's watching him. Plus, you're in a social media age where everything you do is under the microscope and the whole world sees it in seconds, not waiting the next day for a newspaper or ESPN ticker to come across the page and see a clip of it. So the way the information is presented is also a lot faster. That's what works against Luka in today's world. Can he turn around, be a great player? Yes. Now, in terms of the move with Klay, I agree with everything that you said. It fits perfect for them for a myriad of reasons and helps them. It does allow them. I think the big reason that he got out of Golden State is because, and you said it, in Golden State, he was still looked at as the second option most nights, third option some nights. Here, he'll be at least the third option, sometimes the fourth option. There's a difference in mindset when you're the guy that the defense focused their third primary focus of energy on versus the second. Because in Golden State, it's where's Steph, where's Klay. In Dallas, it's where's Kyrie, where's Luka. Klay becomes the third option, which is why he's going to get more open look threes than he's probably had in his entire career again since they've had Durant, because Durant was a second superstar that did the same thing that Kyrie and Luka are going to do for him, which is pull the defense away and give him either light coverage or open looks where he can, gently, float along the perimeter and wait for them to drive and kick however they draw up the offense. And Kidd will do a good job of that because he was a all-world point guard who had a way of finding guys and getting guys open. I think that's when it's what's going to be the big difference that's going to help propel them. And that's where I think that outside shooting, Klay comes down, they get a bucket, he hits a three. Now they're back in transition. He hits an open three, a 6-point swing in like 20 seconds. Way different than they come down, miss a shot, the other team comes down to get it back. Now they're playing iso ball. The defense collapses and they miss, and there's a 2-point swing. Big difference in mindset and theory. And that's something that will happen a lot. You'll see it because say what you want, there's no way this side of life, with my life on the line, I'm ever leaving Klay Thompson open. He could be 70 with no in a wheelchair, and I'm still not going to leave him open.
And to that point, use the word mindset, and I want to use that to transition to the second phase of this. And I'm gonna start with the reports that are coming out of Golden State. And for those who everybody knows, I live in the Bay. I live outside of the Bay Area, so I'm getting it like in droves. And I have a high affinity for Draymond Green. A lot of respect for Draymond. I think the world of him as a player, and from the little bit I know of him as a man, I'm very high on Draymond. But he was wrong on this one. He was wrong to make it seem like the Clippers didn't want to make a deal with the Warriors. Now, that's involving Paul George, but I'm going to connect the two here. Klay Thompson told Steph Curry, do not get involved in his negotiation. There was a report that said Klay told Steph, stay out of his negotiations. And not like mind your business, but stay out of negotiations. If they want to pay me, they're going to pay me. But I don't want them doing something because you said so. That's a different cloth. That's cut from that's a different type of dude, different type of individual. I remember I was firsthand on the sidelines watching Klay get better, getting back to the court after the second catastrophic injury. What people don't know is the G League team that he was working out with, he thought so much of these dudes, he brought them to his home, every team member, paid for them to get there, threw a party for them, made it a point to go out and commend publicly the general manager, and go out of his way to talk about those guys and to get those guys active time on the floor. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but when you go through that and you watch a Lester Quinones that's now part of the Golden State roster,
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the G League dudes that he got in there. You see a Jeff Dalton that was part of the Philadelphia 76ers roster. That was one of the G League dudes that Klay brought in for the Warriors for NBA clubs to see. And the list goes on and on. That's who Klay Thompson is. The Warriors for the last 3 years decided they didn't want to sign this dude. Now, I use this analogy here, and it's going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to use it anyway. If you remember back in our backsliding days, we always had that one girl that was either married or had a boyfriend that she lived with.
Where's
And he
this
slept
going?
on the couch or in a different room because she couldn't get him off the lease. And, they couldn't afford to get divorced or whatever. So he was just there until they got their money right. But she was like, no, I'm not with him. He's just there. That's what the Warriors did to Klay Thompson. They literally put this dude on the couch. They figuratively, I should say literally, they figured they put this dude on the couch, said, we're not with him. His contract just ain't over yet. But in the meantime, we're going to bring in Andrew Wiggins and pay him off of a few good games. You knew you had to pay Klay. Andrew Wiggins wasn't a bust. He played well in the playoffs, but let's look at it
And they won a
realistically.
chip with him. And they won a
They
chip
won a
with
chip.
him.
But I'm going to get to that. They won a championship because of a lot of things. Andrew Wiggins was a part of that. But let's say they won it because of Andrew Wiggins, right? You know you've got to pay this dude. His resume, his history, his pedigree says he's not going to show up. Somehow, some way, he's not going to show up, right? So they backed the truck up and paid this dude instead of trading him and deciding to keep Klay so the three of them could ride together. You say, well, it's no room for sentimental value. There's no. So what the hell is Draymond Green getting his money for? Because it ain't for what he did recently. It's because of who he is and who he's been. So you can.
I got a rebuttal to that, though. I got a rebuttal to that. So, and you and I have had this conversation. The biggest mistake that most general managers make is that they pay guys for who they were instead of who they're going to be.
True.
We saw Klay over the last same 3-year window that you talk about try to work his way back from catastrophic back-to-back leg injuries.
Lower leg injury.
And we saw him when he came back, he was a diminished player. He was not the same guy that he was before he went out.
Hold on. Stop right there. That's the mantra coming out that he's a diminished player. Was he the guy he was before the injuries? No. In all truth, and full disclosure, were you the man you were 5 years ago?
No, and I don't want you to pay me like I was.
Exactly. But the thing is, you build relationships based off who you were and who you become. They decided
to be cap held by paying guys.
The thing. They still in cap held. They made bad decisions. You made me fast forward to my point, so I'm gonna go get to it. They made that. They screwed up Wiseman. They screwed up Poole. They screwed up Moody. They screwed up Kuminga. We get a little deeper than that. They're the organization that decided to get rid of Kevin Durant instead of trying to make that relationship work. And my affinity for Draymond. If you're going to sit here and blame the Clippers and say they don't want to make a deal with you because they don't want you to get better. Nah, bro. Come on, man. They don't want to make a deal with you because you don't bring to the table. Everyone outside of Golden State knows Kuminga ain't that dude. But you still waiting on him.
I can't say that.
Okay. You can say that. Has he been that dude up until now?
Kuminga's been amazing.
If you got to think that hard, you know the answer is no.
No,
he's been that dude up until now.
He was a great player last year for them. Great.
He was a great player for them last year.
Yeah,
really. Okay.
You know what? Barely start.
I'm not going to argue that point because it's not about which Kuminga's been. But let's say he's been a great player. Where'd they rest in the playoffs? Did he make the All-Star team? Was he mentioned for an All-Star team?
Come on.
Was he mentioned for a first team?
In and out the
It's
lineup.
the proof that he's been a great player.
Yes, once he had that conversation with the organization that said either play me or trade me, and they started playing him, that's when you saw his numbers jump through the roof.
You saw his numbers jump to a roof for a guy that came out of I don't want to say came out of, but a guy that that teams weren't game planning for in the second half of the season when teams have already got their game plans together for the Warriors and what they're going to do. You know what? I'll say he was a fantastic player.
Okay.
How come they haven't paid him? How come they can't get rid of him?
You know why? I'll give you that answer. They don't want to make the same mistake with him that they made with Jordan Poole. You pay a guy.
So hold right there. Hold right there. They don't want to make the same mistake So it ain't about Klay Thompson not being the same player. It ain't about the Clippers not wanting to make a move with you. It's the fact that you screwed up your house. As a Sixers
I
fan,
agree.
I can tell you this with certainty. You can't whiff on the second pick of the draft. You can't whiff on another lottery pick. You can't whiff on Moody and walk away like, oh, we good. Nah, the chickens come home to roost on that.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I think they missed on Moody. They definitely missed on Poole, although Poole kind of showed you that they were right about him in terms of up
No,
here.
they didn't miss on Poole. Poole delivered. You know who Poole's best friend was allegedly? Klay Thompson. And for the last 3 years, the organization has been sticking it to Klay Thompson. We don't think it's a coinky dink that's when Jordan falls off the rails. Because as much as you want to give Wiggins credit, I'll counter that and say they don't win that title without Poole either. They don't get a shot of it. And when Poole starts soaking, they're losing. They're barely getting into the second round and getting mollywopped
He was
by
an
the
instant
Lakers.
bucket. He was an instant bucket. I agree.
So, and Poole, Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman, Kevin Durant, all those things, those are a friendly fire. The point I'm trying to make, even Draymond to an extent, the point I'm trying to make is the decision to not pay Klay using his I don't want to say his Dominican skills. I'm gonna say sporadic play was a scapegoat. Because the fact of the matter is he's not the same Klay. So why the hell are you running the same offense? They keep trying to capture the same thing they've been doing for years and aren't tailoring it to the players they have. Again, you're screwing up your home. You're vegetarian, but you're over here trying to make meat recipes. Like, dude, things have changed in Golden State. Things have
I
changed
agree.
in the Bay Area. So if you're gonna make that move, you don't want to go with Klay. Bob Myers said this last year, and it went under the wind. And we're gonna move on. I'll give you the final word on the segment. But he said if they trade Klay and crush that locker room, he said that last year on the trade deadline. And that resonated with me because it's like, wait a minute. This dude isn't supposed he's supposed to have failed skills. I think that's what they're telling us. That's the story coming out. And time will determine if that was a lie. And I'm telling you now, so I had to prepare for something. Going through Klay Thompson through some games and through some numbers, that time will tell you that's a lie. It was not as diminished as they tried to make it seem. He wasn't the guy years ago, but as I said before, same guy 365 days ago. You ain't the same dude 5. And we didn't lose an Achilles and a ligament to get to where we were. The floor is yours.
So I don't disagree about the fact that Klay definitely still has some ball in him, and we're going to see that in Dallas. I led with that. But what I will also say is that I understand paying a 34-year-old shooter who can't attack the rim and can't defend his position the same way he did 5 years ago at a $25 million clip, or a guy who says, I'm okay coming off the bench, whatever, on a team that clearly needs to change something because they've gotten stagnant and they're playing behind the 8 ball in a loaded West. Makes sense. They had to change something. Steph is the blue chip. Steph will be there until he doesn't want to be there. I don't know what the affinity with Draymond Green is, because if I'm them,
I can answer that. But go ahead.
I offload a triple single guy all day of the week. Yes, he's the anchor of the defense, but there's 10 other guys you can
watch that. That is what got somebody snuffed out.
I know, but the facts are the facts. The man don't average a double nothing. He's all triple singles, and that's fine. The point I'm making is you can replace that. Yeah, he's a dog in a locker room and rallies the team, blah, blah, blah. He also gets a billion technicals a season and gets kicked out of games that cost your team wins because he can't control his emotions on the floor. He acts like a rampant child. So, and as smart as he is, it's inexcusable that he allows himself to let his emotions to go unchecked and act as out of control as he does. But that's neither here nor there. The point I'm making is the only person on that team that should forever be untradeable and untouchable is Steph Curry. And Steph gets to write his own ticket because he is the face of that franchise and is that franchise. And even at 35, hasn't really shown like he slowed down, looks like a 35-year-old player. Everybody else
check those numbers for the second half of the year, my man.
Well, he's out there trying to carry the offense by himself. Like the offense, you said, why haven't they changed the offense to cater it around Klay? Because the offense ain't built around Klay. The offense is built.
No, I didn't say they should cater it around Klay. I'm saying that they need to make adjustments in their lineup. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And that's a Kerr thing. So Kerr needed to do a better job. Maybe Kerr now finally has to do more coaching and maybe do a better job of drawing up schemes and plans because teams have found ways to neutralize Curry by saying, you know what, we're going to let Curry do whatever he wants and just focus on everybody else. We're going to leave Dre wide open because he can't hit water standing in the water. And so we're just going to focus on the other three guys that are on the floor. And that's cool. But I think at the end of the day, if I'm in Golden State, they got to get under that luxury tax because they're not a team that's competitively competing for a basketball title anymore. Not at the way that their roster is constructed. So you got to figure a way to get Draymond off your books and build around whatever you're going to do with one final run with Curry, or trade him and go through a massive rebuild and get a haul for him. That's the best you can hope for at this point. I don't think that they're going to compete that much in the West. At best, if all cylinders are clicking, they're a bottom half of the top 8 seed. Somewhere between 5 and 8.
They're not a playoff team. They're not a playoff team.
Yeah, they're somewhere. But again, when you got Steph Curry healthy for 70 plus games, you always got a shot. It's just who else is going to help you.
You won't. You know what we were going to do? I wanted to do another topic, but we were 20 minutes deep on this. I guess we both had a lot to say on it. Now you won't have Steph Curry, and I'm not wishing. Well, I don't need to preface that. I'm not wishing that on him. The harder and heavier the load at this age, the more of a toll it takes on your body.
Agree.
And at some point, man, dude, at some point, y'all gotta they wanted Klay to come off the bench for Pajinski. To say he was difficult behind the scenes and all these things, you're not gonna have Klay to kick around anymore.
Okay.
So what are you gonna do? You brought in Buddy Hield, and this was the issue I had with the Sixers.
And we talked about Buddy Hield last year.
Well, the thing about Buddy Hield is it's kind of like an issue I had with the Sixers years ago, right before they did the process. And I remember these things like what is it, the elephant that has a good memory? The Sixers brought in Kwame Brown, and at the same time, the Sacramento Kings had a guy named Carl Landry. Sacramento Kings and Houston Rockets had a guy named Carl Landry. He was a young, undersized.
I remember Carl Landry.
Yeah, but he was active. And the Sixers needed an active post presence. And Kwame Brown had been a part of some bad teams, whether it was the Washington Wizards, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Lakers. And I said, you bring in a guy that's the poster child for losing into a locker room that's supposed to be ascending with young players and winning. And I remember a guy, I won't say his name because I don't want to hear Spike. I don't want Spike Eskin ever come out of my mouth again. Yeah. But you know what I mean? But he told me I didn't know basketball. Well, the Sixers that year, floundered, and shortly thereafter, they decided to do the process. I fast forward, Buddy Hield has been on the Pacers, Pelicans, Kings, and I'm forgetting somebody else. He had never made the playoffs before last year. He'd been in the league for quite some time now.
Yeah.
It's not an accident that every team he's been on hasn't made the playoffs. The Warriors
left.
They get better when he leaves, but I can't put that on them getting better when he leaves, but I can say they struggle when he's there. The Warriors lost a shooter in Klay. So much like most dudes that when they lose somebody close to them or lose somebody after being with them for a decade, they go to try to get a person that does the same thing that the female used to do. That either looks the same way, dressed the same way or something, because you don't want to just say, you know what, I need to start from scratch. So Buddy Hield's supposed to be a shooter. But you look at the intangibles that Buddy Hield brings in, none of them lend itself to winning. And you mentioned if you still got Steph Curry, you got a chance. Nah, because you don't have Steph Curry. You got a 14, 15-year Hall of Famer who's on the twilight of his career, who every once in a while has a couple of good games. But because he's a shooter.
And average almost 30.
You know what? And that's fine. But what was his efficiency? He's a shooter. So he's a shooter. So he only needs to make, an average player probably to get 30 has to make about
40%.
No, I don't want to say percent. He's got to make about 3 buckets a quarter and about 2 or 3 free throws a quarter. And one of those buckets got to be a 3. But Steph, he's only got to make 2 threes a quarter. 2 threes a quarter gives him, 6? It gives him 24 points. He makes 2 free throws. He's almost at 30. But that don't mean he's efficient.
You're right, because everybody can do that. You're right.
Yeah, that don't mean he's getting buckets. So they don't have that player anymore. And, so no, they're not going to have Klay. They're going to be relying on Andrew Wiggins, and if he's over his personal issues, They're going to be relying on Kuminga, and if
That
he
story's
finds a
crazy.
way to get on
That
there.
story's crazy. You wouldn't be able to play ball either with that
You know, I
story.
don't know if the story's true or not, so I don't want to go with it. But the
Right.
fact that I can't move past this if I'm Klay. The fact that I've brought you 4 titles, part of 4 championships. You had Gilbert Arenas, Ike Diao, Anthony Rudolph, and Andres Beach. Like I can go on and on and on of the players that have walked through those doors. I made you a global entity, and you want me to sit behind a dude that can't get it together for personal reasons? Are you? Are you? Are you?
Stop. Basketball is physical, but it's a lot mental. And if your
And you know
mentals ain't
that's
right, you're not
fine,
gonna be able
but
to
I'm
do it.
here. I'm here. Count on me. I'm in the building. May not. I may.
He also went 0 for 10 in his closeout game.
You know
0
what?
for
You know
10.
what? Andrew. What did Andrew Wiggins do in his final game?
This ain't about Andrew Wiggins. He went 0
You
for
don't
10.
know.
You talking about Klay. Klay went 0 for 10 in his closeout game. Did he not? Yes or no?
No,
Did he
no,
go
he
0
did. He did go 0 for 10. He did go 0 for 10. And you know
Okay.
that's fine. And the fact that we have no
And
idea
that's
what
why
Jonathan.
he's in Dallas. Because he went 0 for 10. If
No,
he went 10 for 10, he'd still be there.
in Dallas. He was in Dallas 2 years ago. Like let's call a spade a spade. Mentally, he had checked out. He was so. I
Now we're just
couldn't
making up our own
imagine.
narrative. All right.
I couldn't imagine being a person who can't control what I do, where I go. You don't want me when I can't leave. Like, what type of crap is that?
Sounds like a lot of toxic relationships.
And what happens with toxic relationship? You get toxic.
People can't leave them, and they stay in them until they get to a breaking point.
All right,
Somebody
that's it for
forces their
this
way out.
episode of Unparalleled Sports Talk. We're gonna come right back, and I want to talk about LeBron James and legacy. I'm gonna take a quick break. Talk LeBron James' legacy.